Welcome back to Brilliant Fools. My name is Adam Green, and this is Wednesday Q&A. And we're going to jump right into it. Just a few questions today, but the first one here is, how do I stay consistent when I'm the only one doing everything? This is a pretty typical entrepreneurial, self-employed kind of question. When you're the only one doing everything, how do you stay consistent? I think it's good. It's good to consider. However, the first question I would ask myself is, why am I the only one doing everything? If I'm getting started, I might need to be the only one doing everything. I might not be able to actually do anything about that. I might have to wear a lot of different hats and just do that till things get rolling and things get going, and then I've got some capital to put into not being the only one doing everything. And if that's the case, one of the main things that I've seen help me be consistent is to try to kind of block things out. So I have a particular time of day that I like recording these videos, for instance. Now, I don't do it every day, but sometimes I'll record multiple videos in a day. Sometimes I'll just do one because I have the time for it and I can jump on it, do it quick, and then go. So it's nice to have that consistency. Once you get established in a habit, then you can keep going. So blocking those things out when I need to do what. Now, if you have a job as well and you're trying to start something, you may need to get a little more creative with that, depending on your job, especially if your job requires different hours that go stretch out at different times. Then you might just need to be more creative, and that's fine. There's no worries about that. Just attempt to be consistent and don't worry so much about whether or not you're being consistent. I know people who have gotten things done by just staying focused on one particular thing and keep at it with a just absolute laser focus until it's done and it's completed. I know other people who have a large spread of things that they have that they're doing and having to get done. And it's kind of a slow buildup of everything until finally, oh, look at that. Everything is done. Everything's completed. That's great. And that's good. But consistency with it depends on the task, whether it requires consistency or not. And then I would say for me as well, knowing that it's a short time, like this is not a permanent time that I have to be consistent. My goal in this is not just to have another job where I not only do all the typical work, but I also do all the business ownership work. It's me defining what part I want in that business. If I want to do the technical work of the business, then at some point I want to hire someone else to do some of the other business work. If I want to work on the business and build it, then at some point I'm going to want to hire somebody else to do the technical work. I may even need to train them to do that technical work. And then I can be more consistent. The more things you have going on, the harder it is to stay consistent. It's definitely true. And the more necessary I would say it is to block out that time and put it on your calendar and keep your calendar. Again, the calendar's made for you. You're not made for your calendar. So don't be inflexible about it, but be consistent. Be pretty dogged about it. So that's what I would say there. That's what works for me. There other things might work for you, and I'd love to hear from you what works. Let's get to a technical side of things. Speaking of technical, how do I forecast revenue when I'm just starting? There are some ways to do it. I'll give you a very technical way to do it. If you have a product, you know how much it's going to sell for. Here's the unit sell price is $15, and it takes me $5 to make it. I make $10 gross profit on each one of them. So how do I forecast revenue? Well, how many units have I made? If I've made 100, then I've got $150 or $1,500 that I could forecast making when I sell it. In what time period should I forecast that? Well, I don't know how long it's going to take me to sell those, right? Maybe you don't forecast revenue yet. I would say that most forecasts that I've seen of revenue when someone's just starting out, they tend to be pretty oversold, if that makes sense, like overestimated. But whether it's a product you're selling or a service, if I have, say, like a subscription and it's going to cost somebody $30 a month to be part of this subscription for whatever I'm selling, then I know so many people a month gets me to this goal. And it may take reaching out to people and saying, okay, if I do X, Y, and Z, what could I expect to see as far as my clientele is concerned? In other words, if I advertise on Google Ads and I spend $500 a month, how many, in the first 6 months, how many people can I expect to get in there? And it may be that you're only going to get, especially the first month, you might have 1, maybe 2 people because you're trying to figure it out, what works, what doesn't, adjust, etc. But then the next month you might have 5 people, and the next month could be 10 or 20. It's hard to tell, but asking around, asking people who are in the business can definitely get there. I talked to several marketing people as a potential to hire that out. To start, I'm going to take it in-house and then I might hire it out later, but it gave me a great idea of how much to expect as I'm moving on and how long to expect before I can actually get that income coming in. And I think I'm forecasting at a conservative side as opposed to an overestimation, but it's not super easy, but it is possible. And it may not even be necessary unless you're really trying to get some kind of funding for it. But if you are trying to get some kind of funding for it, you could look at industry trends. What do people tend to do in a month? How much work do people tend to do in a month? And then know there's going to be a ramp up to that, but maybe in 6 months you get to that point where you're decently full to at least half time, if not full time, as long as you're plugging away at it. So how do you forecast revenue when you're starting? It's difficult. I know that's not a great answer, but first of all, ask, do I need to forecast revenue, or is this something I just need to get going on and get working? Don't let it stop you. Don't let a lack of a forecast number stop you. How do I delegate effectively without losing control? I'm going to bring this back to what we've been talking about a lot this week, which is behavior and telling ourselves the correct things about who we are in Christ. How do I delegate effectively without losing control? I need to ask myself, first of all, what am I truly in control of? There are some things that I can do myself, which is good, but if I don't trust anyone else to do things, then I'm never going to be able to step out of my role. And if I have to keep control, maintain control over everything, then I'm never going to be able to step out of my role. Maybe I want to be in a role of quality control. So I'll tell you that in a good accounting firm, whatever's going out, whether it's financial statements or tax returns or anything, they get reviewed before they go out, typically. Whether that's a self-review by the person doing it, especially if you're one person, it's going to be a self-review, or if it's someone else does the stuff, I delegate all the preparation to them, and then I just look it over and then sign off on it, and it goes. So that's one way to delegate without losing control. But the other way to delegate without losing control is to train effectively. And if you're not training well, if you're not teaching well, then you're going to feel like you're losing control a lot more than if you train well and you teach well. If you train well and hire well, then you likely won't have the fear. So I think that's another question I would ask. You're asking how to delegate effectively without losing control. Why do you feel like you're losing control when you're delegating? Especially if you delegated effectively, not abdicated, not just thrown off all your work and say, you go do this, I don't want to hear about it, but you're saying, these are the things I want done and this is how it needs to be done. And then you go back when it's done and you look it over and you say, yeah, that's good, or you tweak it. why do you feel like you're losing control? Do you feel like the people that you have aren't trustworthy? And again, if you're surrounded by idiots, then look at the idiot who's hiring them all, right? But why do you feel like you're not in control? There's a deeper question there, I think, to understand. And I think it goes back to understanding who you are in Christ, that he is in control ultimately. And we don't have to worry about all of that. But we want to be very wise. We want to be very wise in the way that we delegate and the way that we set things up. So let's look now at sales. What if I hate sales? How do I sell authentically if I hate sales? Oh, I hate sales. Good news. You probably hate sales because of a misunderstanding of what actual real selling is. I'll give you an example. I had always thought sales was, I got to go knock on doors. I got to be pushy. I've got to be relentless and never take no for an answer. No means next opportunity, or no means not yet, or whatever that is. I've just got to keep going, keep going, keep going, keep selling. True sales, just put yourself in the other person's position. And what I realized is that I was actually very good at sales and didn't even realize it. I didn't even know, because my natural tendency was that I wanted to help people. So people would call into, let's take two different instances. I'm going to take the plumbing firm, or the plumbing company, and the accounting firm. People would call in to the plumbing company, and I would tell them, if I happened to be in the office and was answering phones that day, a lot of times I would do accounting work and be in the office. So if I'm in the office, I'd tell them, well, what is it that you've got? Okay, so you've got a toilet leak there, and you've got, all right. Well, the toilet leak, yeah, we can definitely come out and do that for you. And then I'd start to explain to them, look, it could be something simple. It might be in the, in the supply line going to the toilet, and then we could fix that out, and that wouldn't take much at all. But it could be leaking if it's on the floor and you're noticing wet on the floor. You might have up to a broken flange where we got to get in there, remove the toilet, remove the flange. We might have to cut into stuff. We've had to dig out some things if it's on a basement or a concrete pad. So it could get pretty extensive. It doesn't sound like sales, does it? It just sounds like information. Well, what that does is that sets up the idea in the customer's mind, okay, something's there, and they actually care about what's going on with me, and they want me to have the information that I need. And then I'll let them know if we can help them or not. And there are times when good sales says no. In other words, if somebody's like, hey, I need you to come and, hook up the electrical in XYZ. We're like, well, we're not electricians, so we don't do that. But we know someone who does. And we'd recommend the person who does. That's sales too. Just helping people out is true sales, partnering with people. In the accounting firm, people would call in and they'd say, hey, I need XYZ done. And I'd be able to tell them, yeah, we got the capacity for that, and we can definitely help you out with that. And then I also, doing that enough, I got to the point where I could tell whether or not we wanted that person as a client, because there are people you're not going to want to work with. And don't just take everything that comes your way. Otherwise, you're going to be run ragged by some people that are just not worth it. So how do you sell authentically? Just be yourself and be genuine with people. Love on people. Partner with people. Truly try to help them out. If what you're trying to sell can't do that, if you don't believe you can do that with what you're trying to sell, you're going to have a much harder time selling it, for sure. And then finally, this is another one. And again, that selling, even that goes back to behavior, who you think you are, who you believe you are, what you believe sales actually is. And then finally, how do I shift? How do I shift from operator to leader, and from the technician to the overseer, the do it all myself to delegate the things? How do I make that shift? It's a process, and it starts for sure in the mind. And it starts with what you believe about yourself, who you believe you are. identify yourself with the thing you're doing, you're going to have a much harder time making that shift. So we'll take the plumbing and accounting things, right? So if I identify myself as a plumber, I am the plumber, I'm going to have a hard time giving that up. I'm going to have a hard time letting someone else do it and go through the same journey that I went through to get to the stage that I'm at, the expertise that I'm at. Same thing with accounting. If I'm convinced that I am an accountant and I'm an excellent accountant, I'm going to have a hard time letting someone else do things and not finding nitpicky faults with things that maybe aren't even, to use an auditing term, things that are immaterial. They don't really apply, there's a term in construction. Usually it's used in something like framing, the bigger stuff, but if it looks good, it is good. And that term doesn't mean you do shoddy work. You do good work. You do quality work, yes. And you want to train that and hire those types of people with those types of mindsets, train those mindsets into people. But also understand where I'm being nitpicky and where I'm not. Maybe there's a tiny little gap that I'd rather there not be this gap here, but I also know that some caulk in there and paint, and it's never going to be noticed. It's whether I have a tiny little 16th gap or I have no gap at all, it's going to be caulked, it's going to be painted. Not only is it not going to be noticed, but even if I'm right up against each other and I have no gap whatsoever, eventually there's going to be a gap because houses shift and move. And probably sooner than I would think, it's going to be there. So there might actually be a good thing to have a gap. Just using another area that I've had experience in. And identifying where your no compromise sections are, and then being able to step out from what you're doing. I heard a great example of this where a couple of guys were talking, they were entrepreneurs, and they said going back and doing things again, they would pick a business that they didn't know anything about. And one of the guys was like, I'm not a chef, I don't know anything about food, so I would probably buy a restaurant or open a restaurant. Because what's going to happen is as soon as the chef, the head chef, the excellent chef that I've spent time getting to know and understanding and bringing him in, when he goes off and opens his own restaurant and leaves me, I'm not going to try to get in there and do the chef stuff myself. I'm not going to try to cook the food. I'm not going to try to prepare things. I'm not going to try to be excellent in that. I'm going to go find the person that's going to do that. And what that does is that puts me in the proper place of running and building the business. And then the person who knows that they're a chef, and that's what they do, and they do it well, and they love it, and are fulfilled by that, I give them the opportunity to do that and do it well. And I should probably compensate them well for it too, so keep that in mind. But yeah, how do you make that shift? It's got to be a mindset shift. I can't identify myself in the things that I do. I've got to be able to step away from that and let other people do them. So that's what I would suggest. I'd love to hear from you and know what your suggestions might be. I hope this has been helpful. I truly do hope it's been helpful. And until next time, thanks.